Hello guys and welcome back. So it took about 15 minutes for this to cache and sim, including the viewport at this resolution. You can see we're getting all the details that we need. We're getting the expansion at the beginning. We're getting all the details from the tendrils. Probably need to go a touch higher to capture all the fine details. But I really like the first part here. It has all, you can see all the fine details, everything is there, and then we're getting this nice mixture. Let me cancel this. We're getting this nice integration between the tendrils. Even though the smoke has gone through them, we're still getting sourcing, and we're still getting tendrils coming out of the volume. The other thing, the other reason I wanted these to go up higher is because I want them to get deformed by the volume, and they do, but I want that effect to be a little bit more visible, and hopefully you guys can add that. The effect is basically when you have a tendril and then the smoke goes up and deforms it. So that's the main idea behind it. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this result, and I think all the tech part is taken care of. Let's take a look at the temperature, because we have a temperature with this volume as well. So let's take a look at that. Let's remap this properly. I think the temperature overall is really low, but I think there's a fair bit that is contributing to the sim, and I would like to preview that and show you guys that information. Maybe 3, and let's lower this to 50. Something like that, and let's change the background so it's easier to see. And I'm gonna kill the previous mplay, and let's hit play. It's gonna take a few seconds for it to show up. Now we're copying some, I believe we're copying something from the divergence into the temperature or something like that, that is putting some interesting data in the tips. You can see them bright here, and that's definitely a very interesting effect. I can't remember why exactly this is happening, but that's definitely a very interesting effect. The other thing that I generally do is I would add the actual source to this sim. I would blend in the density to restore some of that, the actual tip, to just restore that and accurately have and precisely have those voxels within the sim. This could be a separate volume that you just render, include in the render, but it generally helps. And you can see all the interesting details here. It's definitely very interesting, and you can get two different looks. You can get the fiery look, and you can get the dust-like look if you want to. So it's totally up to you which look you prefer. Now obviously once we have this amount of smoke, it's probably gonna rise up a lot higher. I would expect it to go much higher because of the heat and the amount of fire we have currently. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to take a look at, let me cancel this and let's save the sim. And the next thing I wanted to look at is adding wind to this. So the main idea is to create a new source, to create a pump field and inject that into the sim. But the wind is not something related to the sim. It's just, it happens to be within the system. It doesn't really get affected by the sim itself. It rather affects the sim in one way direction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box, and let me get an estimate. Let's use this. Okay, so let's I'm just gonna make a box that encompasses the explosion and probably higher and probably bigger, so that we have enough room for it to grow in case we wanted to sim this. I'm going to use this direction, which is the x-axis, to push the smoke, so that I wanted to drift this way. Now obviously I'm gonna lower the resolution quite a bit, because it's gonna expand the bounding box drastically, and depends on how much you're willing to wait. It can change the sim time a lot, but the technique for adding the wind is going to be very efficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a volume node, and with this node we can simply initialize data. So here I'm going to create a val field, and I'm going to change it to byte size, and I'm going to change this to 0.4. And now we have this bounding box filled with a velocity field. Now it's called val, it's not a vector yet, and we need to change that to, instead of scalar, to a vector field. Cool. So the other thing I want to do is I'm gonna blast one of these x fields, one of these fields. So let's say at name equal val.x, and I want the density. Okay, so delete. I'm gonna name that density. So here, name density, and I want to rename from val.x to density. Okay, don't think I have to do that. Yeah, I do. Cool. So I'm gonna merge that in. I'll explain why we did the density. Cool. So I'm gonna create a volume VOP. I'm gonna dive inside, and within this volume VOP, I'm gonna create a noise. I'm gonna use the point position, and it's a 3D noise. Okay, and I'm going to compute the length of this noise and bind export that as the density. And let's take a look. We should see some data. Yeah. So we have a preview of the noise pattern, and I'll explain why I did a 3D float, because actually we're going to use this as the vector to noise up the wind vector, and then this is going to be the mask word to apply the noise at. And let's change few values to make this a little bit more interesting. Something like that. Actually stretch it along this direction, and then I'm going to use an add node, and I'm gonna export this, and this is the direction I want to add. So let's call this wind direction, and it's a vector field. Okay, now let's set this to 1. Cool. So we're pushing the smoke this way. Now to visualize this properly, I'm going to use a volume trail node. I'm going to create a grid. Grid is going to be facing this direction. Sorry, this direction. Let's make it bigger. And let's increase the resolution to 100 by 200. Let's connect this and this, and let's use the velocity field, which is val.x. Let me scatter some points. That's strange. Let's convert this to a VDB, which we don't have to. Let's see if that helps. I'm gonna vector merge this, and let's see why. Okay, that's fine. Let me change the viewport, maybe something. Okay, let me pause and debug why this is not working, and then we'll come back in a few seconds. Sorry, I know why this is not working, because we're not setting the velocity vector to anything, so we need to bind export the velocity vector. So it's called vel, and let's change the name to vector. Change the type to vector. I don't need these two guys. Don't need these points, and let's set it to vel.x, and there we go. Perfect. And let's set the wind back, and now we know the direction of the wind. Well, I can tell the sense, to be honest, of this, the orientation. I can only tell the magnitude. Let me lower this. I wish they had arrows or something to tell properly. Okay, I think it's the other way. So let's flip this, -x. Cool, and that's pretty much what the wind is going to do. Now, we don't want it to be uniform. I want it to affect, as it gets higher, I want it to get stronger. And this is super easy to do. I'm going to take the Y position of the voxels, and I'm going to fit range that. And let's export this and this, and let's add a ramp as well if we wanted more control. And let's just multiply the velocity by that. I don't want to multiply the density. We could, but it's not going to make any difference. Okay, let's see what we have. Cool, so it's changing there. Set it to 10, maybe 1, and now we can use this. We should see it go to 0 completely there. Set it to 50, yeah, 0, and then we can tell it to only be applied at certain height. So something like that. And then I want to, actually we don't have to, we'll do the multiplier in the DOP context. So I'm going to create a null, call this out wind, and let's dive inside. Let's lower the resolution. Actually, I'm going to turn off this source here because it's slow to import, this guy as well as this guy. And I will do a quick test with these settings and see what we get. Okay, let's go back. For the sourcing, I want to import the wind. So source volume, I'm actually going to change it to pump. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna select the outwind, and under the SOP to DOP binding, the source volume that I want to affect, we can remap that. It doesn't have, the name of the channels doesn't have to mean anything. I want to change this to density because that's what the volume is doing, and I'm going to leave that to pump, and then here I'm gonna set it to vel, and I want to inject that to vel, and let's see what we get. Let me do one more thing. I'm going to lower, I'm going to set it to 50 and 50 on both, so it doesn't have any linear degradation or variation along the height. And let's make sure. Okay, cool. And I'm going to increase its value a lot so we can see it clearly affecting the sim, and then we can, once we know it's working, we go from there. Okay, it doesn't look like it's working. Let me change this to density because that's I believe I have to change both of them. Set this to 1 or 10. Now we have to leave this to pump. This is correct, and let's set this to 100. And yeah, this is correct, the depth of field. Cool. It doesn't look like it's working, so I'm gonna check and see why this is happening and why it's not working, and then we'll continue in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.